This last 5 to 6,000 years has been our lowest level of consciousness. It is hard for many people to be letting go of this system that we've known for the last 5,000 years. And I think there are others that are clinging to that power over. And so are not wanting us to wake up and see the full reality. And so much of what I think we're seeing in the suffering in the world right now is just these repetitions of trauma patterns that we inflict on each other.
Again and again and again and again. And then we wake up and we say, how, as a human race, is it possible? How is it possible that we are doing this to one another again?
We have these timelines and we can choose. We could choose to be on a timeline of increasing idealization of technology, AI, transhumanism, go the path that they went on in Atlantis and go through a cataclysmic reset to wake us up and help us heal. But we don't have to. Think of the internet and AI as the training wheels.
Yes,
Helping us remember the capacity of our consciousness
definitely.
and that we have this ability to be telepathic again. When we connect to our hearts, we connect to that infinite source portal that allows us to download information from anywhere in the cosmos. We have that capacity within us that's beyond our wildest imagination and beyond any technology that we could invent. And I
Yeah.
think technology would ultimately restrict us, constrict us, and lead us into a timeline that is the shadow aspect of the age of Aquarius. And I think those ancient cultures were trying to leave us messages. Like in Göbekli Tepe, they were clearly giving us messages for this time to say, remember, this is a choice point. Remember,
Remember.
know what you're capable of.
Well, hello, everybody. I am Kelly. Some of you know me as the Angel Lady, and I am having the pleasure of being here today with Heather Ensworth, who I have been following her work for some time now. And I just find that when she speaks, it's very authentic and there's a soothingness and calmness to your frequency. And I just enjoy listening to you. And often, when listening to you in an interview or on your channel, I recognize that the information that I'm receiving from Archangel Raphael seems to be very much in alignment, and we're on kind of a similar trajectory there. And so I thought it would be fun to collaborate and connect. And so, welcome.
Thank you, Kelly. I'm very honored to be in this conversation with you. And I've had the same experience of hearing so much of what's coming through you and how it's really resonating with what I'm getting about these shifts that we're in astrologically and energetically. So I'm very glad to be in this conversation with you.
Well, thank you. One of the things that you often talk about is the end of the Kali Yuga cycle, and you pinpoint it, which I find super interesting. And mentioned that on March 20th, which is also the time of the spring equinox. Right before that, I was traveling across Mexico from, the Tulum area to Palenque, all the way to the Baja, and visiting many sacred temples. And they were showing me energetically the ancestors, the indigenous ones, but also Raphael and the star beings, that we were coming to a choice point right around that time, which was of March 20th, 21st at the equinox. And that we are moving into a choice between an organic and an artificial timeline. And that is when I did a transmission of the choice point light code. And when I began the transmissions to come through, which occurred about over a 3-week period, they were very clear that that was like a definitive choice point and end to a cycle in that moment, which was unusual because usually things are very like, and I've heard you reference the same time period. And so I just find that interesting. So share with me your understanding of the completion of that very long cycle.
It is amazing, that synchronicity. And part of what I think is so profound, and that date of March 20th comes from the research that Bibhu Dev Misra did on the Yuga cycle. And I really respect his work. But he and I track these shifts. He's looking at the Hindu Yuga cycle. I've been really looking at the precessional cycle, and they're essentially the same cycle with a different bit of a different understanding. But it is profound that we, in that precessional cycle, are not only shifting out of the age of Pisces into this new age, the age of Aquarius, but we are at the ending of a 24,000 year precessional cycle and the beginning of a new one. But even more profound from my perspective, we're at the end of the Kali Yuga, this period of 5 to 6,000 years of forgetting, of being in our lowest level of consciousness. And that's what ended March 20th, 2025. So we are out of that period of really losing that remembrance of who we are, why we're here, how we're connected with the consciousness of all that is. And we have this opportunity now to wake up and to move into higher consciousness. But I very much think it is a choice point, and that part of the turmoil that we're seeing on the planet right now is that so many are awakening and feeling the accelerated shift that we're in, but some are really clinging to those paradigms of the past and trying to hang on to that period of the Kali Yuga, but it's over. It's really deconstructing.
Yeah, we really kind of hit rock bottom in a sense. We descended, right? And fragmented, as Raphael saying, the source fragmented into all these pieces and it fragmented out as far as it could go to experience this deep sense of individualization and also separateness and polarization. But with that, there was so much learning, so much beauty too. But now we're taking in that in-breath and we're reunifying, we're coming back together. And in the coming back together and unifying and coming back into love, the veils are thinning, our amnesia is dropping away, and our ability to see clearer behind the veil, behind the scenes, whether it be in something in our society or something that's being told to us, we're questioning things more. I'm wondering more, right? And we're attuning more, feeling more other realities, other timelines, other energies, and not necessarily poo-pooing our own intuitive senses and feelings, where in more of a patriarchal society, it was so squashed, so frowned upon. And we're resurfacing into this sense of authenticity and permission to be who we are and remember who we are. And so it's a really exciting time, but at the same time, it's challenging because I find, even on a personal level, that everything that we knew to be a certain way or to be clear or be true of how things should be or they were has been shaken. Our core has been shaken. And so we have to look at things through a new lens, and sometimes that means letting go of what's comfortable and what's familiar in our mindset, in our thinking, to open up to something new. And as you were saying, people are grasping perhaps to the old because they want to keep what they know that's familiar, but the cycle is shifting and the energy's changing regardless if they grasp or not. So the quicker people can let go, and move with the flow of this ascendant energy toward a higher state of union and love, the easier it's going to be for all of us, I think.
Oh, that's beautifully said. And I do think as Uranus moved into Gemini this month, and Uranus is that planetary energy that cuts through illusion.
Mhm.
It's allowing us to see more and more the truth of what's going on in our world. But also, Uranus guides us back into a connection with divine mind. We're awakening to see that we've been living in a kind of illusion, that illusion of separation, that illusion of polarization, and the illusion of our sense of our human history. I think part of what is confusing is that we've lived in these certain paradigms, this patriarchal paradigm, for over 5,000 years now. And to let that go means to open up to a whole different way of seeing ourselves, seeing reality. But it's really giving us the opportunity to remember that we have been in this cycle of ascending and descending consciousness, that this last 5 to 6,000 years has been our lowest level of consciousness. So we have this chance, as you said, to open up to all these other ways of knowing, to remember our psychic abilities, our ability to be telepathic, clairvoyant, clairsentience, to open up to these ways of knowing and being that we knew in the past. But part of, I think, what's hard is we have this modern notion of history
Mhm.
with this kind of linear trajectory from 6,000 years ago. We started our modern civilization and we've been on this path of progression. And it's actually not true.
No. And we're learning through so much that the timeline of our history that we are so attached to as being a certain way, the more that they uncover places like Göbekli Tepe as an example, and the more research is done, the more recognition that the timeline that we've all adhered to be true, like so many things that we've thought to be true, really aren't. And yet at the same time, uh, there is this clinging or wanting to hold on to, no, we know it's this way, so we only want to see the science or what shows us and what tells us it is the way we think it is. And sometimes even a hiding of what's being discovered, of fear that that will shatter our paradigm and force us to have a different way of perceiving our entire world and reality and our origin. And it's really interesting to watch, and it feels like from you're mentioning this astrological shift coming into opening up spaces for us to see more deeply things that are hidden. I think that's going to show up in our archaeological sites. It's going to show up in our political worlds. It's going to show up in so many things where people are really questioning and revisiting and looking at things deeper than before.
I think that's very true. And I think it is hard for many people to be letting go of this system that we've known for the last 5,000 years. And I think there are others that are clinging to that power over.
Mm,
And so are not wanting us to wake up and see the full reality. But I think, as you said, as we do begin to, the veils between the worlds are thin right now. We are being invited to expand our consciousness and to remember who we truly are and to come back to our hearts. And then it opens us up to this unity consciousness, as you described it, and love and remembrance that we're part of the oneness of all that is. So it opens us up to joy. It opens us up to this spiritual expansion. So I think we are allowing ourselves to go through this death rebirth into a
Mhm.
new way of being.
Yeah,
Transition can be painful.
it can. And I think for a lot of people, some of them are going through truly a dark night of the soul. And honest, in some ways, collectively, we are. It's this huge transition. But what I notice is that, you know, as just an example, in the work that I've done now for whatever, 37 years, it's only been recently that I'd be at a normal cocktail party and people would say, "What do you do?" And I would, instead of couching it and framing it in some way that's more, acceptable to the norm, I just tell people. And I think that is that in general, people perhaps are coming more into feeling free to say, oh, I'm having these experiences where the trees are kind of communing to me, or I had this telepathic experience happen, or my loved one came to me as a butterfly, or without being seen necessarily as crazy. And that people are feeling freer to share experiences that aren't so linear, so placed in the normal constructs that we have all decided and collectively agreed of how things should be, and opening up more. And I think in doing that, it gives more of us permission to be true to who we are and to recognize there's so much going on that behind the scenes that we can't always see. And then when people feel comfortable with that, I feel that it also helps to thin the veil more. It opens, in a sense, as Raphael would say, the aperture and the space or the portal between worlds, to allow these gifts that are within us, that are part of our innate birthright, to kind of have the freedom to feel that they can be shared or explored more. And then as more of us have these experiences and we feel comfortable sharing them, then more people share them, and it starts to move into the quantum field, and it then becomes the next norm. And it's not seen necessarily so much the way it used to be, and it helps us evolve and move forward. And so I just want to encourage people maybe who are listening to this who feel ostracized or have experiences or don't feel they can share them with family and friends, and even things like astrology back in the day was not seen, right? It was pretty off the beaten path. Um, to share, because you'd be surprised that so many more people now are ready and open than ever before. And I think the more we talk about it and open about it, the more it becomes alive.
That's so well said. And I also think, and I talk with my community about this a lot, that as we awaken and as we hold those energies of love and higher consciousness, we are emanating that into the morphogenic field, into the collective consciousness, which supports other people in awakening. And it's in some ways one of the highest forms of social activism right now, because
Yeah.
the Peruvian shamans would say that if there's even a minority of us that get to that level of awakening, the world will shift in the blink of an eye.
Hmm.
So I think that's what so many of us are trying to support, is that transition. And I agree with you. People are awakening. It's happening in a very rapid way. I've been doing astrological readings now for over 30 years. And it used to be, well, first of all, starting as a clinical psychologist, starting to do astrology, that was the transition that many people had a hard time accepting. But then, even within astrology, one of the ways that I've been trained is in evolutionary astrology, which is looking at our soul's journey and what we've brought in from past lives. What are some of the issues we're still trying to work through in this lifetime? But it's really holding that awareness that we're soul selves having a human experience through many incarnations. And it used to be I could sometimes begin to open that up with people, but many people had a hard time with that notion of past lives and living through multiple incarnations. Now I never do a reading without talking about that, without that being the foundation of the reading. And it's remarkable to me, everyone is open to that and beginning to awaken to that awareness that we are infinite beings. And the more I think we can claim that awareness that we're soul selves, part of the infinity of cosmic consciousness, here to be in this experience, to grow and evolve, then it helps us not be afraid, not be so frightened by the shifts that we're in,
Mhm.
and be more able to really see the larger vision of what's unfolding for us individually and collectively in this really powerful time.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And really just staying in the knowing of our divinity and how truly masterful and powerful we are, and the real capacity that we have that, in a sense, have lost sight of. And as we come into that real aspect of who we are, like in the fullest self, I have seen on a personal level that a huge quantum leap in my capacity for creating, bringing things quickly into reality, healing things in my body, moving much faster than perhaps in the past. The ability to have dialogue and communication with people or family members without it being explosive, like real day to day things. We're just noticing a big difference by stepping into alignment with our true mastery of who we are and doing the work day to day, right? Moment to moment, and in everyday life situations, and taking the teachings that we've all been listening to and hearing about from so many for so long, and actually really applying them now in our day-to-day life and seeing the changes. And like you say, when someone is able to emanate that frequency, hold that space, everyone else, whether it's in their little immediate family or in their workplace or in a government building or at a shopping mall or wherever, that resonance, that wave goes through everything, and it is actually making a difference. And we know that now through quantum physics, that that is true, even though it may seem a little far-fetched. So if we keep coming back to taking responsibility for our own words, thoughts, actions, feelings, experiences, that is the work, and it does have a profound impact. And I think so many people are really, really doing that now, and it's really beautiful.
I think that is so true. And I think this is a challenging time because we are in, I truly believe that 2025 is just an incredibly accelerated time of change. And you can see that in the astrological energies. We're seeing that in the earth changes, the solar activity, the galactic energies that are coming to the earth. So in many ways, I feel like it's almost analogous to we're in the birth canal,
Yeah.
leaving one way of being to be birthed into a whole new different way of being. But that pressure and intensity of going through that transition can be challenging. And
Oh,
part of what I think is difficult for many of us is that as we're exiting the Kali Yuga, we're both seeing this rapid awakening that's happening, but we're also, I think, seeing the purging
mm,
of the most intense shadow aspects of humanity that we've lived out in this time of lowest level of consciousness. So we're seeing, tragedies, trauma, suffering that is the results of that disconnection from divinity that we got caught in, and the generations of trauma that
yeah.
have resulted from our sense of separation from each other and competition and power over. So there's a cleansing, a purification that's happening on the planet right now. And as you and I were talking before we got on the recording, I think some of the challenges, how do we stay on our own path of awakening and hold that compassion with and for each other in the midst of the intensity of this turbulent transition time?
Yeah, it's so important because as we were talking about earlier, we can't turn a blind eye to what's happening on in many different places in the globe and the suffering that's taking place, and the pain, or bypass it. Because often I feel in the spiritual community, we want to focus on what we want to create, where we want to go, and hold the vision, and that is key. But simultaneously, as the Kali Yuga cycle is coming to a close, like you're saying, these denser, more polarized, darker, intense energies that are ancestral, that are tribal, that are deep in on a cellular memory, that have been repeated cycles over and over and over and over again, are kind of coming up to the surface in a way in which they're so intense that everyone globally is aware and attuning to it. And because of our technology and the capacity to be aware of so many things simultaneously, it's an opportunity to be like, how can we support the final purging of that, the clearing of that ancestral trauma, the cellular memory within the body of us as a collective consciousness, because it may be in the pocket of, Raphael talks about us going through this, like you're saying, this birthing process. And Raphael speaks about trimesters that we're going through as a collective. But if we think of ourselves as a collective body, not just of consciousness, but almost a body, and there's pockets of density, sorrow, hunger, starvation, terrible things happening, that is almost like a contained space within the body that is in a dis-ease process, that is asking the rest of the body to put all of its energy, blood flow, and attention to for healing, because until that pocket is healed, the rest of the body can't flourish. Because we can't say we're disconnected from that part of the body. And if you have a tumor growth in one area and the rest of the body is healthy, you just don't say, oh, the whole body's healthy. Yeah, you focus on the healthy part, but you have to address, can't bypass this, and ask, why is it surfacing? What does it have to teach me? Why is this disease coming up? How can I bring my resources toward it to healing? Because when that is healed, even if I think I'm separate from it and it's not part of me, it is. It's part of the collective body of our consciousness. And until we can address it and heal it, the rest of ourselves can't come into harmony, into balance. And so it feels really important that we don't spotlight it just like a disease where you don't want to put all of your attention and dwell on it and make it bigger, but you want to acknowledge it. You want to know what the root cause of the disease is, why it showed up, what the lessons are, and what it is asking from the rest of the body to come back into balance. And so, yeah, I've been struggling with that, about, the difference between, disconnecting from media, being in my own world and meditating on, in my chair and sending light, which is important, and simultaneously having awareness of what is happening and addressing it and bringing attention to it so that we can heal it and not just ignore it, because also in the ignoring, it can also grow. Like we think sometimes the more we focus on something, the more it grows. But also if you had a disease in the body, if you completely ignore it, it might also grow. So where is that balance, right?
And I like that image that you gave of the whole body because it is about, and I do think part of what we're being called into in this time is how do we heal? We can't awaken and move into higher consciousness without healing. Otherwise, it's not integrated. It's not grounded. So I think that part of what we can do is I really loved what you said earlier that we each have to take our own responsibility for our lives and what we're called by spirit to do, what's ours to do. And I also think that we're each being called in this time to do the healing work that we need to do. We all carry our own traumas. We all carry the ancestral trauma of our family lineages. We all carry our incarnational trauma. And so much of the work that I do with the clients that I work with is how they're trying to clear that incarnational trauma, to be more fully present here, to not be still constricted or controlled by the trauma of past lives. And I think the more that we're each healing, the more we're coming back into harmony, coming back into balance, then we're emanating that into the collective, and we're supporting the collective and coming back into harmony and balance because we are needing to heal this lineage of trauma. And so much of what I think we're seeing in the suffering in the world right now is just these repetitions of trauma patterns that we inflict on each other.
Again and again and again and again. And then we wake up and we say, how, as a human race, is it possible? How is it possible? Where you just want to fall to your knees and cry that we are doing this to one another again.
Yeah.
And I think, when with the end of the Kali Yuga, the end of the processional cycle, this movement into the Aquarius age is asking us, do we want to repeat that cycle, or can we really collectively say no more, no more war, no more separation, no more bigotry, no more racism, no more people,
Abuse.
abuse, and like, when does it stop? When do we keep people accountable for child trafficking, whatever it might be showing up, right? The darkest of dark that is rising up right now and saying, wait, hello, look at me. And we don't want to look at it, but we have to face part of those parts of our human collective within our own collective body and say, okay, enough is enough. Where do we heal? And then people might feel a sense of hopelessness, but like you're saying, Heather, it comes back to where in you is that still residing? And can you dig that up in you and bring awareness and do the work to heal it? Because you are that cell in that collective body. And when that cell is singing and cleared of its trauma, it affects all the others and it brings up the immune system of the collective body. I don't know why I'm bringing it to this idea, but right, in order for the life force energy in the body to do what it needs to do to heal perhaps the pockets that are denser or in this moment don't have the luxury.
Yeah.
If you're trying to make sure that your baby has enough food, you don't have the luxury to work on ancestral trauma or past life regression or deal with, all kinds of things. But if you do have the luxury to do that now, if you are in that position, I think it's almost our responsibility to heal and clear that as part of the collective body, because in doing so, that's how, if we feel helpless, perhaps we can help those who are part of us somewhere who don't have that. And it might seem disconnected, but it's actually very connected.
It's very connected. And I also feel like we're getting support in this time. I mean, I've been a clinical psychologist, I don't want to tell you how long.
It's okay.
Let's just say over 40 years. But it's really remarkable to me to see that that healing can happen so much more rapidly now. We're being supported in bringing these things into consciousness, clearing it, healing it. And there are lots of ways that we can do that ceremonially, we can do that energetically. And I love your image of our coming into that harmony, that singing that song of love and healing and coming into wholeness. Because one of my favorite Kuiper Belt objects right now is Quawar,
Okay.
who was a creation deity of the ancient indigenous people that lived in Southern California 7,000 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And Quawar is androgynous. So he's integrating the sacred masculine and sacred feminine, which is another critical part of our.
And which is coming up now, right? Us coming into that balance is really important. So I didn't mean to interrupt you. Yeah.
And Quawar brought everything into being through a song of creation. And then he called the animals, the plants, the humans into singing that song so that everyone was singing in harmony and balance with the song of the spheres.
Mhm.
That is such a powerful image for what we're being called into, what we're capable of. And as we know with sound healing, if we're emanating that frequency, that song of harmony and love and balance, we're really sending that to all of those places on the planet that are suffering to help the healing happen. And we are all responsible to together mobilize that healing, not only in how we're healing humanity, but how we're coming back into a healing relationship with the earth also. Because I think that's another huge piece of it. And it's very interesting to me that part of what's really powerful astrologically right now is that the three outer transpersonal planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, are in this incredible synchronization with each other.
Hmm.
They're sextiling each other,
Okay.
which is the energy of collaboration, co-creation, cooperation.
Hmm.
And what's fascinating is Uranus is in the sign of Gemini. Gemini was the age just before we went into the Kali Yuga. Uranus in Gemini is saying part of the meaning of that is remember who you once were before the polarization and division.
Exactly.
Pluto is in the sign of Aquarius, calling us into the transformation into the age of Aquarius. In the middle is Neptune conjunct Saturn in Aries. The age of Aries was the lowest point in the Kali Yuga. And Neptune is saying, dissolve those out of balance patterns. And Saturn is saying, move into a new form. And so we're getting such guidance and wisdom from the earth, from the cosmos, saying, wake up,
Yeah.
remember who you are, remember what you're capable of.
So much support, right, coming in from, recently, as we were talking about the end of the Kali Yuga, where I was working with this white galactic horse, and Kalki came in on the horse, who is this, you know, Indian god that ushers in the new Yuga. And it was opening up space all the way into the galactic core, and the star beings were coming. And now they're bringing me down into the crystal core, and the earth beings are coming. And I know you were just speaking, I don't remember his name, but recently, the beautiful man from Hawaii, about the fern, Yoni, and how the ferns are giving off some spores or showing us that we are on the precipice of something new, and potentially a catastrophic repeat of a cycle, but perhaps a birth of something, right? And so the elements, the ferns, the trees, the beings in the earth, the energies that we've ignored, the walking through the coastal rocks of Maine, and the dragons kind of appearing as faces, and feeling things, the fairies coming back alive in the places in the Celtic worlds in Ireland. I feel like that whole life is coming back online, or maybe it's always been online, but we're tuning now to it because our consciousness is shifting, and also our access to the galactics, the star beings, the star families, the origin of perhaps places and planets we've lived in lifetimes are also coming back on. And what they're showing me is that we are unifying all of those energies that as we are ascending, they are ascending. So we talk about our collective consciousness, the human body, and an energy that perhaps is dense that needs to come into balance for the whole. As we're coming into balance, they're coming into balance. They're ascending. The elements are ascending with Veda Austin's work that the water consciousness is becoming more clear to us and communicative, right? So all these energies from as above, so below within the sphere of all life forms are all together along with us and Mother Gaia ascending into this higher state of consciousness, and we have this support, like you're saying, from the stars, from the beings in the earth, from we're doing this together from the animal kingdom, right?
Well, and I think part of what you're saying is when we remember that we are all part of the oneness, we're not
Yeah,
just thinking about that as humanity, then we're thinking about that galactically. We
exactly.
live in this sea of cosmic consciousness of love and wisdom, and we're each a fractal expression of that. And as we really remember that, and we're in this ascension process, it's happening throughout the cosmos.
Exactly. Yes.
It's really beautiful. And I do feel like we are being so lovingly supported and guided, like you
Mm,
said, by all these earth energies and the animals and plants and elemental beings and the inner earth beings and the galactic beings. But there are times where I think the universe is just so kind. Do you
mm.
remember that comet that came and hovered for 2 weeks in October and was seen both in the southern hemisphere and then the northern hemisphere? Atlas comet.
Yes, but go on. Yeah.
I looked up where it was in the sky, and it was hovering right in front of the stars of the constellation Ophiuchus, the
Mm.
great healer.
Ah, the surface planet, right?
The serpent bearer who integrates the energies of the sacred masculine and sacred feminine,
Mm.
helps us heal and come into wholeness. And I'm thinking, this could not be, this is like a neon light in the sky.
Like saying, look at me, look at
Heal,
me.
wake up, heal.
It does, yeah. And
Back.
the Kundalini comes from that energy too, right? That's that whole life force energy of the merging of the masculine, feminine rising up. And isn't that the constellation that we kind of forget about? Like the 13th one that nobody talks about? What?
Yes, of course, it gets repressed, but so important.
So
It,
important.
it's opposite in the sky, Orion, which I think is the constellation that guides us in seeing our own journey of evolution as humanity.
Mm.
Ophiuchus is saying, and this is what you can become. This is who you truly are.
Yeah, I just love that. I love how they're supporting us and sending us messages and hints. We're not always getting it because we're looking down on our phone or whatever we're doing, we forget. But they are so present and so available. And what they're showing me is that some of these really massive repeat catastrophic cycles that we could repeat, um, I feel like we're out of the woods. I mean, doesn't mean that it's not possible that we're gonna repeat and that we have to be diligent and conscious. But it feels as though we've made some leap, and although it doesn't always show or appear that way when we turn on our news, the general larger collective, I think has made a big leap. And that the need for us to have such a difficult wake-up call. I'm sure we're going to continue to get waves of wake-up calls to break us out of our amnesia and move back into unity by Mother Gaia, by the events, perhaps in her shaking or whatever needs to occur or coming from the sun. But it doesn't feel as though we're going to actually have to like repeat a whole Atlantis, like a whole nother thing. Like we're going to be able to, I hope,
You
what are
know,
you thinking about that?
I definitely think that we're being called into this path of healing. And awakening. The interesting thing in the precessional cycle is that every 12 to 13,000 years, we've gone through this time at these critical points in the precessional cycle, the beginning of one and the ending of one, and then the midpoint, where we do experience these cataclysmic crises, the
Mm,
last one being 12,000 years ago with the Younger Dryas period. So I think part of our healing now in this time is we have that cellular memory of that cataclysmic crisis.
mhm.
And it's encoded in certain uh, ancient sites like Göbekli Tepe, and I think it's encoded in the Great Pyramid to help us remember. And I truly believe that, again, if we can heal and not get caught in that PTSD, then we can really be in this process of an evolutionary leap as
Mm.
humanity and get off the wheel of samsara.
Get off the wheel of this repeat, like, this
Yes,
is our chance that we don't have to do it again.
yes,
There
and
is a pathway that we will do it again.
yes, but
Yeah,
I
and
think
you can see that it's, like, hovering there, and it's like, can enough of us move that needle to turn this way and jump on here, you know?
we're really seeing these different timelines, and we
Mm,
can choose, and I think we all can choose individually as well as collectively which timeline we're on.
I
But
agree.
I think that it really is a critical choice point that we're in right now. And I think it is really remarkable that astrologically, Chiron is in Aries, saying, heal your sense of self, Aries, heal those out of balanced patterns from the age of Aries that are still pulling us into war and trauma patterns. It's opposite now, the asteroid Atlantis.
Oh,
So
wow.
I think it's very powerfully saying you have a choice point here. Atlantis and the fall of Atlantis was at that time of that last cataclysm.
Mhm.
We have these timelines and we can choose. We could choose to be on a timeline of increasing idealization of technology, AI, transhumanism, go the path that they went on in Atlantis and go through a cataclysmic reset to wake us up and help us heal. But we don't have to. Chiron is saying you can heal that, and we can be in this profound time of awakening collectively and saying, we come back into oneness, we come back into love, we honor who we are and what we're capable of with our consciousness
Mm.
that is beyond any artificial intelligence or technology. But I believe that we're starting March 20th, we're in this critical period of transition where we have our free will and can choose. And I think between now and 2032 is that critical period where we can choose the timeline that we're on. But I
Yeah.
do feel hopeful. I feel like more and more of us are awakening. We are here to support that shift, and we can co create this new world that we're capable of.
This new world together, yeah. And yet it, especially with AI and artificial intelligence is moving so rapidly, it's coming so quickly into our awareness. And it being such, it's just very alluring to many, and I'm sure it has its purpose. And I've talked a lot to Raphael about that, and it's interesting how it was so prevalent during the time of Atlantis, and how then that reset needed to happen. And I'm really wondering, I mean, I guess I'll just say something that's been coming in for me. It's a little bit hard for people perhaps to grasp, but even the Lemurian and Atlantean energy, and the trauma that was stored, it feels that on an energetic level, some of that energy that carried the predate of the catastrophic event that was holding a much higher frequency is embedded and held almost within codes and in spaces in our earth, that is bubbling up and being handed off to us, to be entered like as libraries of information within our biology, so that we become the living library of the codes of information during the times of Atlantis and Lemuria prior to their choice point of the catastrophic decision that led them to the fall of this repeat cycle, so that we can awaken those parts that are more in alignment with the timeline perhaps we want to move toward. And so, as I received these codes, I was working with the galactic ones, and now they're taking me into inner Earth, and they're actually guiding me, interestingly enough, to Mount Shasta to go into that space that's very potent there, right? But normally that's where a lot of ascended masters are, which is a very masculine energy. And they're saying, no, you're going to go deeper than that, into the core, into the womb, further down, where the codes of the original teachings and libraries of very feminine energies are holding a space for the potential for the earth to awaken into unity consciousness and to carry those codes within our own biology, so that we are in this process of metamorphosis and shift in our evolution without the need to repeat the cycles of the past. And I'm just like, okay, all right, I get that. And so we're going to do this in this teaching I have coming up in a few weeks and go deep into that place and receive these upgrades. And it's just really interesting to me that, we have this decision to make as a collective, especially around, um, AI. And and I asked Raphael, because I know there's some things out there where people are saying that the AI, is channeling or it's tapping into the quantum field of, of all information. And perhaps there is some, sea or soup of consciousness that it may have access to by the information that was input. But when it comes through something artificial. It comes through something mechanical. It's not coming through the biology of a human. And so it's not carrying the same frequency. It's not carrying the history. It's not carrying the codes and the remembering. It's carrying, and so it's lacking heart coherence.
Yeah.
It's intellectual, and it may be able to convince you that what it's saying is beautifully spiritual and poetically written, and maybe it is tapping into collective consciousness and sharing a stream of information, but the mechanism in which it's streaming through is mechanistic.
Yes.
And because of that, to me, it's dangerous in a sense that it's leading us away from our own biological evolutionary process. And so I think it's really important that we see it as a tool, but that it's not interfaced with our biology. And that may be controversial to say, but I feel strongly about that. And I received that information very clearly from Raphael, that that is one of the things that would lead us to that repeat cycle that you're
I
talking about.
I fully agree. I fully agree. And, I think one way to hold it is that I sometimes think of the internet and AI as the training wheels,
Yes,
helping us remember the capacity of our consciousness
definitely.
and that we have this ability to be telepathic again. We have this ability to tap in when, David Clements talks beautifully about how when we connect to our hearts, we connect to that infinite source portal that allows us to download information from anywhere in the cosmos. We have that capacity within us that's beyond our wildest imagination and beyond any technology that we could invent. And I
Yeah.
think that technology would ultimately restrict us,
Mhm.
constrict us, and lead us into a timeline that is the shadow aspect of the age of Aquarius, which is idealization of technology and our own intellect, as opposed to remembering the capacity of our consciousness and how it is really through our hearts that we tap into that unity consciousness and tap into those higher ways of knowing. It's when we get caught in our minds, we stay in the realm of duality and in that illusion of separation and forget the capacity that we have within us when we're aligned with our hearts to be a part of the oneness of all that is and to tap into those higher ways of knowing. Those psychic gifts are opening up for all of us now. And we really need to honor and remember what we're capable of. And I think those ancient cultures were trying to leave us messages. I love how you talk about the coding. And I also see, like in Göbekli Tepe, they were clearly giving us messages for this time to say,
Under-
remember, this is a choice point. Remember and
Remember first.
know what you're capable of.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I love that you mentioned the training wheels. Because I remember back in the day, Raphael saying, that internet has nothing on you guys. That's just training wheels so that it opened your brain to the idea that it's possible that you can communicate with someone on the other side of the world, or that you can see an image of them and connect energetically. And then the training wheels will fall away as we move into this new age and our telepathic abilities will become stronger. And I personally notice and feel that happening more and more and more. And so do my students. And so I think it's no different with AI, and we get excited or sometimes about, oh, it can do something so quickly. But I think it's just a mirror of showing to us we can do whatever it is doing, but we can do it with heart coherence. We can do it with our biology, with our frequency, with evolution, not mechanistic. And so when I separate it as it's a tool and it perhaps is mirroring to me a part of the consciousness that is showing me our ability of what we can do, then fabulous. But not to merge with it. And that's the concern. And I couldn't agree with you more that the star beings, and our ancestral indigenous ones have been leaving us clues for a very long time. And maybe we're starting to notice them and understand them. They might have appeared cryptic at first, but I think they're pretty much in plain sight. They're like, look, it's right here.
Well, and I think as you were saying, so much is getting revealed now. I mean, we're discovering some of these ancient sites that had been buried and we're more and more seeing evidence of these very ancient advanced cultures that are supporting us in realizing we've been at that higher level of consciousness in the past. We're capable of it again. So, and I think we're really being guided to be aware of this choice point that we're in and to be consciously choosing that path of love and higher consciousness.
Yeah, and that's it. It's a choice. We
Yeah.
get to choose. It's part of the free will process.
Yeah.
So we get to choose. Well, this has just been really, really sweet and lovely. Do you have any parting words for those listening at this moment who perhaps are struggling with these changing times? Or-
I really love how powerful the energy of Cheroklo is, that healing centaur, who, interestingly enough, of the healing centaurs, most of them have unstable orbits. Cheroklo's orbit is very symmetrical and in balance. And she's that healing energy that reminds us how to hold compassion for ourselves and how to hold compassion with and for each other. And I feel that more and more. I am so grateful for it in my community and feel it in the expanding spiritual community that we can hold those energies with each other. We're not alone. We're not only being supported by all of these stars and planets and galactic beings and inner earth beings, but we can support each other and feel that heart connection with each other, to know that together we can emanate those energies that can help support the world in healing and transforming.
Mm, thank you, Heather. That's such a beautiful reminder. And more than ever, I think it's so important for people to gather in community and spiritual connection and to collaborate and to dance and sing together under the moon, or to have be on a Zoom call in whatever community they're in, or whatever way they can do it, but to reconnect and weave together, in a bringing our hearts together and in a state of love. So thank you so much for this.
Thank you, Kelly. This has been
This is just
wonderful.
so lovely. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom with everyone. I really do. It's really special. So thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, bye. Mm.